Investing in the wrong dealer diagnostic tools can cost you thousands of pounds and countless hours wasted. I'm Andy Brooks, CEO of Maverick Diagnostics, and over the last 2.5 decades, we've supplied tools and equipment and set up workshops globally. And today I'm going to show you how to pick exactly the right dealer diagnostic tool for your workshop. Now, the aim that we have here is to look, first of all, at new vehicle registrations. Now, you might not think this is important to start off with, but it will reflect 3 years down the line when we come to an aftermarket workshop. Let's look first at the SMMT figures, the Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders, for 2025. The three categories are overall registrations, fleet and lease vehicles, and prestige and premier brands. Let's first look at the overall registrations. The top 5 that we have on the list are Volkswagen, BMW, Ford, Kia, and Audi, with Toyota, Mercedes, Nissan, Peugeot, and Skoda finishing in the top 10. It's worth mentioning here that many of the tools will cover an entire group. So for example, the VAG VAS tool will cover Volkswagen, Audi, Seat, Skoda, Bentley, Lamborghini, whereas Ford would only cover Ford brands in Europe. The next category is for workshop who are wanting to build their fleet workup. Interestingly, the brands that we mentioned previously might not be the same branding as we're using in fleet work. This is because many of the brands now cross over. Toyota, for example, you're actually using PSA software, but you would think being a Ford Transit, you'd use Ford software, but in fact you use Volkswagen software. It's a little bit confusing, and I think with vans, particularly light commercials, it's always been the same. The top light commercial is still, for the last God knows how many years, Ford at 35%. Then we have Volkswagen, Vauxhall, Peugeot, and Renault. And featuring in the top 10 is Toyota, Mercedes, Citroën, Nissan, and Land Rover. Moving into luxury and premium brands, we often have to recommend the correct diagnostic tool. When you're looking at buying a tool or becoming a specialist, what you need to look at is the volume of those vehicles and exactly what you can charge to repair those vehicles. And typically in the prestige end, this is where you can charge the most for repairs. The top 5 for premium registrations are BMW, Mercedes, Audi, Land Rover, and Volvo. When these vehicle manufacturers take over another group, they often change the software or change the nuances of what the software is going to do or change the platform completely. So you've got to be made aware of this. When you're actually choosing a tool, you've got to make sure you know what the vehicle year coverage is and that you haven't changed the platform entirely after that year. So when we look at that, there are 2 groups that jump out straight away. There's VAG and Mercedes-Benz. VAG stands out because it's a cluster. It sits in the overall top 10 as Volkswagen, Audi, and Skoda. And Volkswagen is obviously a major part of the fleet market, with Audi then in the prestige list. One platform can cover a big spread of day-to-day work. Mercedes shows up for a different reason. It's strong in overall registration, it's strong in light vehicle, and it's one of the most common brands that independents want to position around. That combination matters when you want to move up market without losing volume. The lesson here is not to buy the tool just because you've seen a couple of vehicles come in, but look for that overlap, because overlap is where you get the fastest payback. You're not relying on one niche vehicle type, one type of customer, or one type of job. Even though this can be a successful route, you're choosing a group across the work that you see. Now, before anybody runs off and buys a tool based purely on market data, we need to understand exactly what your workshop and what your area is capable of delivering. Because the real factor here is not what the UK is currently buying, it's what is in your area and what is going through your diary. We're going to look at the internal stats that you need to understand before you invest. We recommend pulling a minimum of 6 stats. Starting at the very first stat, what brands are you actually seeing? Pull the list of your top 10 brands by job count. Then split the fleet work from the retail work if you're carrying out fleet work. Pulling this data will allow you to see what's actually in your area and what's coming into your workshop. But it doesn't stop there. If you're getting a high volume of Ford vehicles, for example, and your aftermarket tool is dealing with them fine, there's no need for further investment at that point. Instead, we're going to need to look at stat number 2. We're going to have to look at how many jobs per month require more than basic reading codes and resets. We need to look at, for example, coding and programming, module replacements, online coding, and security access. We now need to make a list of those actions. So we need to understand how many of those jobs did you sublet to another contractor, How many of them did you send out to a main dealer? How many of them that you couldn't fix? And how many did you complete in-house? So the turnaway time and the subcontracting time is where the lost revenue in the business now sits. This is where getting on board with an OE tool and the training can actually sufficiently increase the revenue of your business. We're then on to stat 3, and we're going to be digging a bit deeper into that. If you're paying a dealer group, you're paying a remote diagnostic service, or you're paying a subcontractor to come in and do these jobs, you already had proof that that's what's needed in your workshop. If you're already spending over £2,000 a month on subcontracting to remote or whoever else, you already have your own business case to have an OEM tool. This is when you can actively map out when that return on investment is likely to come. With stat number 4, we need to look at the financials. It's not just about the average invoice value across the workshop, it's about the jobs that the OEM tool can really sort out. Pick the last 10 jobs that you either subcontracted or turned away, then have a look at the average labour sold, the average parts margin, and the average gross profit. You've now got to realise that vehicle that you've kept in-house has now given you not just turnover, but it's given you better gross profitability. In stat 5, we're going to look at time costs. So OEM tools can not only save you a lot of time, but without the proper training and infrastructure, they can cost you time. We need to be perfectly honest about how many technician hours are lost chasing jobs around, how many hours are lost waiting for subcontractors to turn up, and how many hours does it take when your ramp is blocked. Time is a cost. So if the tool can free up another couple of hours capacity in your workshop, think about how much additional time is put on across the year. Stat 6 is the most simple. It's basically your investment cost of your OEM tool over the time of profitability that you've made. You're going to need a laptop, you're going to need an OEVCI, and you're going to look at the software cost and the ongoing cost of support and training with the OEM. With Maverick Diagnostics, if you buy a bundle, you'll get your setup for free, your help with registration, and the initial 1-hour training. For a real life example of this, VAG current cost is around €12 an hour to do any kind of programming or any kind of facilitating in diagnostics and guided diagnostics. You could do one job per week and actually charge around £170 per job to do what they're doing in the dealer for those €12. So immediately you are looking at a load of profit within that. You've also got to look at what vehicles you're currently working on. What's your customer demographic? What customers do you really want? What customers do you want to retain? We've always said there's a bit of a traffic light system here. You want a green car with a green customer, nice and easy to service, nice and easy to repair, and they're all better to repair if you've got an OEM tool set in front of you. You need to then look at those stats and say, well, Mrs. Jones has got a 3-year-old Mercedes, 4-year-old Mercedes, 5-year-old Mercedes. We're perfectly happy to work on that. We've got the OEM tool, and actually we can now do her DSB. We can do her service online as well, which is actually going to add to our profitability. We can come in probably still a couple of £100 below the main dealer cost, but we're able to offer her exactly the same service. And you can retain that customer, and then Mrs. Jones will go off to the next person and say, hey, my car was serviced by these guys in exactly the same way, and I've even got the digital service online. If this video has been helpful in selecting what the route and what brand you want to go to, that's what you need to know in order to pick the right brand for your workshop. If you're ready to pick your brand, head over to the Maverick Diagnostics website, where you can purchase genuine OEM tooling from the manufacturers we've covered today.